Well, in Primal Scream, we have a scenario that would become the stuff of stories going forward and has come to some reality in our current era of resurrecting extinct organisms through manipulation of DNA and the sort. So here, we some frozen cells from way back when is discovered through oil drilling expeditions in the Arctic, and the cells multiply. This is what's this far-fetched if you manipulate it in for cloning or whatnot, but that's not quite. It just once the cells thawed out, they multiplied and created a murderous ape man. So there's all these killings going on, and people reporting what the attacker looks like and all this sort of stuff. And of course, Carl is hot on the tail of the story, but once again, he's thwarted by what appears to be the oil company and what have you. Doesn't want this story to get out because of all the trouble they would be in, because it was through their foolishness or what have you, unleashed this unholy terror upon the public. So cover stories are tossed around. Carl almost has a win here, or even Vincenzo is like, wow, you really nailed this one, Carl. This is great. And then suddenly it's squelched by higher-ups, and the cover story comes out that, well, they were transporting some animals from the zoo, and there was a wreck or whatever, and a couple of gorillas or apes or what have you escaped, and so they're saying, oh, that's what happened, and these attacks must have been one of those animals. We got to find the animal and take it out and all this sort of stuff. Of course, this was not the case, as Carl continues to investigate all this and figures out where this creature could be, and slowly but surely he figures out there's this subterranean area where, oddly enough, atomic testing had taken place during the war, and the facility's long gone, but the underground tunnels and whatnot still exist. And so, sure enough, he goes in there and he himself gets attacked and probably would have ended up killed as well. But then the guys in cahoots with the police or what have you show up, kill the creature, saving his life. But they, of course, wanted to cover up all the evidence. And that's the end of the story. And there's, once again, Carl can do nothing about it. No one will believe him, as well, the creature's dead, and they'll just go with, gee, it's really tough that the zoo animals got out. Man, we just got to be more careful about something like that. Now, I don't know, but the oil company didn't want to be held responsible for what had happened. But then again, I mean, it's like, I know this is extraordinary circumstances. The cells just grew and formed this creature. Later on, of course, you'd had stories of, most famously, Jurassic Park, where dinosaurs were brought back through cloning of DNA, preserved in amber, that sort of thing. And of course, they had to manipulate it with frog DNA and stuff like that. But anyway, then later cloning, of course, we know the sheep and stuff getting cloned. And remains of the woolly mammoth was discovered. So there's certainly, theoretically, very possible to bring back the woolly mammoth and that sort of thing. Most recently, apparently, someone has cloned dire wolves. So another extinct species of wolf, but they're apparently claiming that that's back. So that sort of thing would go a lot more. This one's a little far, even more far-fetched. Of these particular cells just started off, like how life began, and the cooling unit where it was stored broke down, and so the creature is fully formed and just takes off running around through the streets, and and sought out the tunnels because why? I mean, if this had been someone who was frozen and came to life or what have you, or more in tune with the cloning thing where they raised this creature and it got loose, and wanted to cover up the story, that would put, I would think, more liability case for them as they stumbled upon this. How would you know that cells in ice could? Certainly, you would be looking at something that might create a virus of some sort and be an infection that we can't fight off, and that sort of thing could be a big disaster. But the idea that it would somehow aggressively form into this, ape man from the distant past, that scenario seems rather unlikely. But, they had a guy in an outfit that was, and in the dark, looked convincing enough. Now, granted, it's a show that's had vampires and werewolves and aliens and all that. So what the hell? Why not? A clump of cells in an ice cube gets thawed out and then grows into an ape man. Well, since you can have that. So once you've accepted the other, why not this? But the scenario of where experimentation was done and all this sort of thing, and it got loose and started killing people. Well, there's the stronger case of liability for the company and what have you. Here, I don't know, they could argue, we wouldn't have known it would do this, or, it wouldn't be as severe, I would think. Meanwhile, you've got this cover story of the zoo transporting animals screwed up. So I guess, the zoo could be sued for negligence and whatnot. And so I suppose the company has to pay them off to cover that. I mean, you're in the same boat you would have been in the first place. So yeah, it doesn't quite work overall in that bit of the motivation, because there's always this running theme for the shows that Carl can never win. He can never get the story published or people believing him. Even though this one, even Vincenzo was pretty much convinced it happened, but there's nothing they could do. And really, you got to go back to the TV movies the last time he ever had any kind of sympathy for Carl Kolchak and his crazy stories. But anyway, it was an attempt at a different avenue, and I guess just wasn't quite there as far as coming up with, the science fiction elements you would need to have a convincing story of this sort of thing. And I guess they just didn't think of it. I don't know. It's just the cells would do it on their own. Rather than have some mad scientist, that's a standard of horror, and could throw that in there, and whoops, it got loose, and of course, whatever business or what have you wants to cover that up, and that would probably work a lot better on that. But you get the basic templates of Night Stalker's show, and Carl going into the dark and seeking a monster, and he found it. Fortunately, he was rescued by the very people who covered up and made it impossible for him to get his story published. So, there we go. Primal Scream.